This is the Last Watchdog podcast with Byron Acohido.
Radical transparency. It's a notion that security vendor CRITICALSTART is putting into practice with great success. I asked CRITICALSTART's Jordan Mauriello to explain.
The concept of radical transparency for us, I think, is something that we're seeing kind of across the internet as a whole, right? We're seeing people ask for radical transparency from service providers everywhere. And even as we started to get into the MDR business, and we started kind of to talk to security operations directors and SOC managers out there, and we were asking about their MSSP and MDR experience, one of the chief complaints that we heard from them that is they didn't feel like they had transparency with their service provider. So as we went into this, we said that there has to be a concept beyond just giving them visibility, beyond just giving them metrics and numbers, but something a little more radical.
Why were the companies asking for this? What was kind of behind this?
So I think, as a service provider, especially when we're doing security analytics as a service for a customer, right? Well, we're building this on top of trust. And if we're not willing to put the customer in the same platform that we're using, if we're not willing to let the customer see the work that we're doing on the back end and even hold us accountable, are we really giving them an opportunity to trust us to provide a quality service? And that's definitely the notion we were hearing. Is you see a lot of service providers that are running one platform for their analysts, one platform for ticketing and management, one platform for communicating with the customer, and they're all completely separated. So if the customer wants to see, well, what really happened on the back end, or what happened with the incidents you didn't escalate me, what kind of work, what quality investigation was put into those, well, there's no opportunity really to see that. When we built our platform on a concept of radical transparency, it was with the idea that the customer should be able to hold us accountable for everything that we've committed to do for them. So whether it's from simple things like how we close incidents that aren't escalated to them, did we investigate them properly, what kind of filters and logic are we putting into the engine itself, what are we adding to the zero trust mechanisms back, comments, audit logs, even our internal SOC review process for when we score our analysts, like all of that. Right? Shouldn't that be open? Shouldn't that be transparent? Shouldn't they be able to hold us accountable for what they're paying us to do?
So how do you do that? How do you truly make it accessible?
Yeah, so you have to remove the idea of this multi-tiered platform systems that are separated from the customer, and you
all
need to put
running in silos with everybody having their own.
Exactly, with a separate customer and a separate platform, and there's no multi-tenancy. Right, a real service provider's platform should be multi-tenant and multi-MSSP. You should have the concept of child and parent relationships, where parent organizations can drill into the child organization. So even for us, for customers, not only can they look and see stuff that we're doing on their behalf, they can go in and look at the actual work our analysts did for them in the same platform we do it in, because it's the same platform they use. If they have child companies, which we do have customers that have, they're parent organizations with child companies, they can go look at the work that's happening there.
Parent-child relationship, that's a good way to look at. One more note before we move deeper into exactly what you guys are doing. So, conceptually then, it's why? Why is this kind of radical transparency needed? I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. Complexity is rising. Do you need transparency in order for the complexity to actually work? Not just functionality-wise, but in a secure way?
I think because the idea that companies are just coming in and managing hardware or managing software on behalf of their organization is kind of a decaying idea. What CISOs and CIOs and VPs of security are looking for right now is business outcomes. They're looking for reduction to risk. They're looking for protection of brand, right? And they want to be able to trust to do that. But what's the old adage? Trust but verify. Right? And how is their verification in an MSSP or an MDR business if we're running multiple separate platforms and we never really let them see what we're doing on the back end? They get to see exactly what we want them to see. Our report will show you everything we did on the back end. Well, that's great. You should have great reports. But can they just go into the platform and look? Can they actually verify the work that you're doing on the back end? Because that's where the real verification happens. And if you do that and then it builds trust, that's when these guys feel like they're actually getting the business outcome they desire.
Business outcomes, that's a good way to put it. So let me ask you a little bit more about how you guys actually deliver the service. Okay, let's take it for granted now that your customer, the parent, can see everything if they want to, and you can help them see everything. You guys actually use 2 layers of analysts to sort of make sense of all the ocean of inputs coming in.
We do, yeah.
Can you talk me through that?
Even accountability internally is incredibly important for us, but there are 2 chief problems that we have to deal with to be able to do MDR services incredibly well. Really, the core of it is dealing with false positives at scale. Right? If you can't deal with false positives at scale as a service provider, you're never going to give a quality service back to your customer. But when you do that, that means you are making a lot of changes and updates to system. You need to be able to scale the ability to deal with false positives well across the technical skill set that's needed to adjust the systems. So you need to drive that down to the lowest level of possible decision maker. Right, but then to do that, then you also have to have accountability internally. Like if we look at how the military and the government handles ComSec material.
Drive what down to the lowest common denominator?
The changes and decisions that would be made to adjust monitoring and filtering for a customer. So determining that something is a false positive and building a mechanism that's going to remove that false positive from visibility for the customer.
So at the ground level, that's somebody like, I'm trying to visualize this. Is somebody dealing with all of the incoming, the first level of all of the incoming inputs to figure it out?
Absolutely right. So this is the L1 analyst, right, or your tier 1 analyst, and he's seeing all the events, all the incidents that are coming in for every customer. And he grabs an incident and he begins the investigation process. And during the investigation process, he determines that this event was actually good. It was a false positive. So what he wants to do is he wants to establish under what criteria can I prove this is known good next time? What API calls, what automation actions, what playbook needs to run to know that this is good next time and doesn't need to be investigated? Right now, he's going to build out that playbook at the L1 level, at the lowest level possible. Right? But then we don't want to implement a change like that without validation. Right? So like I was saying, just like when you're handling sensitive material in the military, there's two-person integrity for everything. Right? So there's two people opening every material safe. There's two people looking at every specialized communications gear piece. Right? That's the same concept we put in here. So the analyst, he does the work, and then we also see another analyst at tier 2 who will then validate all the work. So he'll do it, he'll go ahead and save and test that filter that he's going to put in, and then it automatically goes to a queue where the L2 analyst gets notified, hey, there's a filter action waiting for review. And then he goes in and runs all the same checks again. Okay, here's the incident it came from, here's the event he thought was good and why he thought it was good, here's the actions and automations that need to run to prove it's good next time, test it against the whole data set. Did it filter out anything we didn't expect it to? Is it going to be good moving forward? And if it is, then he will activate it and actually put it in production. So we have those integrity checks on everything we're doing to put system changes in, but by doing that in an automated fashion and making it systematic, right, and having the concept of customer scope and multi-tenancy, it allows us to make changes instead of making rule changes at scale that take days, right, in a SEM engine where this one's generating a false positive, L2 analyst verifies it, goes to a SIM engineer, he goes to change control and gets permission to make an update, then he goes back and rewrites the content rule, and then 4 or 5 days later, maybe you push an update back to your SIM across your customer base. We do that in 30 minutes or less. Right, so the ability to do it at scale is the ability to push it down to the lowest level and make decisions quickly and then verify that they're good.
And as a managed service provider, you're doing this on behalf of a group of customers. So
Absolutely.
The idea of I, as one of your customers, at any time can see exactly what you're doing, or I can add to that process somehow to tweak it?
Yep, so any of those filters that we would have just made, so we decided an event was known good for your organization, and then you want to go in and you want to validate the work that we're doing. All that's completely transparent. You can see the back-end work we did. You can see the comments between our L1 and L2 analysts as they're chatting back and forth in the platform. Right, so you can go validate even the things that we didn't escalate as an incident, even the things that were like, oh, that's authorized activity from a domain administrator using PS exec, but it looked malicious, we were able to prove it wasn't, and now we're going to filter that out based off very specific criteria. In the future, you're able to go in and say, well, let me see the investigation process. How good did he do this? Right? And you can validate that on the back end. And it's the same thing for every incident. Like even our SLAs are completely transparent in the platform. We keep the audit logs wide open. Here's when we received the event, here's when someone touched it, here's when someone took an action on your system to isolate a host because it had malware, here's when we escalated it to you, call logs, everything goes in there in the platform so they can see and hold us accountable. So if we miss an SLA for us, literally shows on a dashboard for the customer. It will increment by 1 SLA miss. They can click on it and see what did we miss and why.
What's an SLA?
An SLA is a service level agreement, right? And so we're agreeing for us that we'll respond to every incident within 1 hour. Right? Every incident we're going to have respond, either escalated to the customer requesting they take action, taking action on our own behalf, or having tuned it out knowing that it's a false positive within 1 hour of when the incident actually occurred.
Well, it's pretty much now sort of a big consensus initiative, the notion of zero trust approach, trust but verify, and try to get that mindset, that philosophy going in sort of network security. This is part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a core part of how we deal with false positives at scale. When we look at the traditional logic for how an engine works for security analytics, you're collecting an enormous amount of data from the enterprise. You're bringing it into one place, generally some kind of SIEM or log management tool. And then you build a rule set that digs into those logs and finds the things that match known bad conditions. But when you receive all those events, at first you assume all those events are good until proven bad. Right? And so it's an innocent until proven guilty logic. Right? A zero trust engine is the exact opposite. Right? We're going to collect all the same events again, but we're going to assume every single one of them is bad until we can prove it good. Now, what you have to be able to do that is you have to be able to build playbooks and automation actions to prove that out at scale. That's the process we were talking about earlier. If it takes you 5 hours or 3 to 4 days and sometimes longer for some other MDR providers to push a rule change, well, you'll never be able to look at it with that logic because you can't do it fast enough to keep up, so you'll overwhelm your analysts with a volume of alerts. Right? So you have to take that logic and then you have to be able to drill into it and remove the ones that are known good, do it quickly and do it effectively.
Well, that's the zero trust part of it, but what we're talking about here is kind of the flip side of the same coin, which is as you're doing that, you also let everybody see your playbook. So
Correct.
Everybody sort of contributes to the playbook, I guess, or can see it.
Absolutely, right? And so we don't assume that they should have to trust our work on the back end at all, right? So all the playbooks are visible, right? And we allow the customers to go in and critique those and give feedback on those. And that is just getting rid of the idea that we're the only experts and we should be the only ones that make decisions as a service provider, and you don't need to see that. We've got that covered, which is an idea that even when I was a customer of service providers, I definitely felt like that was an attitude. It was like, well, you don't need to know what's running on the back end of that. You don't need to see our analytics tool. You got the event and email. And no, I want to understand what signature was that and
trust
why.
Me, but why should I trust you?
Why?
Yeah.
Show me why I should trust you. Give me a reason to. And that's what we're giving to our customers, is we're giving them a reason to. So they shouldn't have to trust. They should be able to verify and prove that they can trust us and that we're trustworthy as a service provider.
Interesting. In closing, this is a lot of good food for thought, but in closing, you guys are at the forefront of zero trust and radical transparency that we just discussed in a specific area, which is detection and response and providing it as a service. But really, it's a concept, if you boil it down, it's a concept of baking in security and making it open. Is this, that basic concept, something that we're going to need in order to reach the full potential of digital transformation and Internet of Things centric commerce?
I definitely think so. I think people are looking at the tools and the technologies that are out there as a part of digital transformation now, and they're looking for people who have the expertise to provide services on top of those, right? The greatest problem in security as a whole is resource shortage, right? There is not enough expertise to do the work, and so they need the expertise to be able to transform. So there has to be quality services that are being provided on top of this. And this is not the, let me throw 30 people at the problem, let me bring people on site and augment your staff. This is, how do we scale this at a reasonable cost that's a part of the technology that I'm buying, put this in one purchase order, one quote where it's all together and I'm going to one person to get this specific capability. Right? And so that's how people are beginning to look at it, is it's not just about the technology anymore, but it's about what capability am I trying to add as an organization, and can I get that capability from one vendor instead of going 3 different places to get one capability.
Zero trust could also be, sort of absolute trust because I can see everything.
Yeah, we completely agree with that, and I think it's one of the reasons that our retention rate is so high even, is because our customers can go in and believe in what we're doing because they can verify it across the board. We don't assume that they know what we're doing is good. Right, we let them at any point question that, critique that, give feedback on that, and adjust expectations at any time.
Okay, well, great discussion once again, Jordan. It's always a pleasure talking to you. You're smart people out in the vanguard.
We've definitely gotten some smart people on our teams, and we're proud to have them with us. So thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.